Hey everyone, Sir Owen Disney here. It is Saturday and wow, natural light. So that means that obviously it's the daytime and it's actually in the mid-afternoon, and I thought it would be a great time to do a Halloween Horror Nights video. Why? Because we got some new news. Not any cryptic performances from Dr. Jimmy. I would hope one of those would be coming in the next week or two. But we have some new clues. And there's some new information and some new rumors that I want to talk about. Now, before I get started with anything, I want to refer to a page called Behind the Thrills. And Behind the Thrills posted an article recently on their website, basically talking about a couple rumors and speculation, and that's what this channel deals in, rumors and speculation, about the event for this year. And one by one, I'm going to talk about my opinions on them. Now, the first one says, this year we will see the largest house ever constructed in Halloween Horror Nights history. So that means that the biggest soundstage at Universal, which is Soundstage 21, which last year held Escape from Raccoon City and Cabin in the Woods, will be the host of the biggest house in Halloween Horror Nights history. And if you're going by pure speculation, I would suggest that what this will be is going to be our Alien vs. Predator house, which will be coupled with two street experiences that will tie into the house, one being Alien, one being Predator, and of course, we're stuck in the middle, and it's going to be awesome. So basically what it says in the wording of this webpage is that it was going to be tied into two street experiences. This house is so massive it'll be tied to two street experiences, which, based upon speculation alone, leads me to believe that this is our Alien vs. Predator house, and we have an Alien and a Predator street experience to coincide. So that makes perfect sense, right? So you go in through maybe Predator and you go out through Alien, or vice versa, and you witness Alien vs. Predator as our biggest house in history. That is a possibility, especially if you believe any speculation. The second bit on this page includes the return of The Walking Dead. I've been saying it since January, and I've been flip-flopping back and forth whether I believe The Walking Dead will return this year. I think right now, at least as of Saturday, May 17th, my speculation is The Walking Dead will return for one final house this year. Now, there are rumors. I don't know the validity of these rumors. Obviously, they are rumors and not necessarily truth. That AMC signed a contract with Universal to do 3 years of The Walking Dead. So obviously we had our house in Disaster Queue, and we had our house in the Parade Building, and that also led up to the entire park experience last year. Well, given the entire park was outfitted in a Walking Dead street experience, did that potentially cover the 3-year contract, and that would mean that we're getting our start of American Horror Story this year? It's up to interpretation, honestly. I would think that we are going to end The Walking Dead's run and Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando this year with a soundstage. I think that will end up being the case. Now, I've been wrong before, obviously, and I've bounced back and forth whether I believe The Walking Dead is coming back or it's not. And there are lots of reasons to believe either yes or no. But, as of this moment, until I think otherwise, The Walking Dead, I believe, as of now at least, will be returning to the event in a soundstage. That will be where it bows out, and FX comes in next year with all their long list of things they want out of the house, and we bring in American Horror Story next year at 25. That's what I'm thinking probably will happen. Thus being why I have not been predicting American Horror Story, but that's a little bit further down this little list, so I'll get to that in a minute. The next tidbit is the fact that we're not going to get an icon this year. Obviously, last year we didn't have an icon. We tied everything into the Evil Takes route, and that obviously was just not even marketing, really. It was just done for the website and for the diehards. Of course, you had the vines and everything at the entranceway, and that was nice. But basically, once you got in the park, all that stuff was pretty much gone. There was a lot of things, apparently, that got canceled at the last minute that would have made it a lot more of a in-park experience than an internet experience. But that was, like I said, it was something that just kind of got canceled at the last minute. Sometimes that stuff happens, and I'll get to that later on in this video. Now, the first thing I do want to talk about before I get started on the icon situation is the fact that obviously icons are important to the diehards. The diehards want icons, and the general public probably could care less, to be totally honest. But that's okay. I totally understand why that would be the case. Now let me get something here, and I will continue what I wanted to say. Obviously, I'm going to talk for a while, so we are going to plug in. And let me get this taken care of real quick. Sorry. This is what happens when you don't edit, folks. It really is. It becomes craziness. So, yes. Hi. Let me try to tweak this a bit. And good. We're good to go. And as soon as that sound dings, that means that we are plugged in, folks. That means we're going to be in here for quite a while. So, get a beverage and relax, because we got a lot to talk about. Well, let's talk about this list continuing. Like I said, no icon. Is there going to be a theme? It's up to your interpretation as well. There's a lot of speculation right now that we're getting a Dark Carnival. At least with all the cryptic performances and the Cassilda Clues, thanks to Mystic Freak for that name, that maybe we might be tying everything into a Dark Carnival of sorts. So, obviously, led completely by its evil ringmaster, the return of Jack the Clown. Of course, we'll hopefully, in my mind, we'll have chance with him as well. But that's another story altogether. Now, the second completely contradicts this statement. The next one is saying that we will have an icon. And obviously, Hate to Fly said we're going to get some sort of a master. A master of fate. A puppet master, if you will. Not necessarily tied to the puppet master in, I believe, Singapore? Or is it Japan? I don't remember. I think, there we go. Yeah, the puppet master in Singapore. I was right. I should not do that. I shouldn't probably second guess myself. I do that a lot. But, oh well. So, that means we're going to get an icon this year, after the last statement saying that we would not. Well, Jack the Clown is coming back this year, and yes, he is definitely an icon. He is the icon. I guess, in essence, he'd probably be the Mickey Mouse of Halloween Horror Nights. Because his face can be put on anything, and it would sell. There you go. I thought about that. I thought it'd be a good idea to say that. Maybe not. Who knows? But it made sense to me. Okay. Now, there was a mentioning on the internet lately that the Legendary Truth merchandise is no longer available, and the What Evil Takes route blog actually links back to the Halloween Horror Nights website. That means potentially, well, you know, it actually connects to the next thing I'm about to talk about, and that's in-park play. The Legendary Truth game, everything connected to it, and all your wonderful scanners, everything worked really well, at least sometimes. The scanners didn't always work for me, at least. I had kind of a lot of issues. Weirdly enough, I always had issues at Resident Evil and Evil Dead. Very bizarre that was the case. But I went through Resident Evil like 1 billion times to try to get those points, and it almost never worked. So, in-park play. Well, it sounds to me this year that it's going to be a little different. This is another main reason Universal jumped to the in-park free Wi-Fi. Basically because they're going to utilize it via Halloween Horror Nights this year. It's obviously not the main reason. I think Springfield and Diagon Alley have something to do with it as well. And the fact that obviously Disney has it all over the parks. But at least at Universal Studios, there's some pretty good Wi-Fi. As a matter of fact, I have a video that I shot in Central Park, and the Wi-Fi in Central Park is spectacular, so yeah. And it literally is, because Cinematic Spectacular is right next to it. Yeah. And I'll warn you right now, that's not the only pun I have. I got a couple more coming up. I'm sorry in advance. Now, so it sounds like last year we all banded together. We all banded together in our legions, and we teamed up to answer the clues and to go through all the pinballing we had to do around the parks. Obviously, that's like, you have to go to Afterlife, then you have to go to Evil Dead, then you have to go to The Walking Dead, then you have to go to Havoc Derailed, and that's how you get points. Yes, we all did that last year. I did that last year, and I only went to the event 6 times. Now, it sounds to me, at least if you believe behind the thrills, that there is going to be another difference to this year's in-park play, and that's going to be the fact that it's going to be survival of the fittest. Not necessarily a group thing, it's going to be every man and woman for themselves, and that's what it sounds like it's going to be. So, that'll be interesting to see what happens, because obviously everyone teams up anyway, so saying that is probably going to be just, yeah, it's not going to happen. I think everyone's going to work together, because we all stick together. Us more fans have to stick together, right? Right, Mystic Freak? So, yes. I think all the legions will probably still stick together, and they still have, even after the event is over. Everybody's made lifelong friends because of this. And just attending the event, I have. I really have, and there's some really awesome people I've met via Halloween Horror Nights. And like I said, I only went to the event twice. Now, granted, I don't really count 2012, because 2012 was a bad year, but, well, there's a video on this channel, on this very playlist, this Halloween Horror Nights playlist. It's the first video if you want to know anything more about it. So, our next tidbit information is the fact that we're getting some houses from Hollywood. Now, this has been speculation since day one that Insidious was coming to the event. I am probably about half and half Insidious is coming to the event. Now, granted, I didn't get to go through Dead End, because obviously I did 2 houses in 2012. But from the people that went through Dead End, I can't verify this personally, but what I heard, at least I heard this from one person, I don't remember exactly who it was, but it was said that Dead End was kind of like Insidious. I can't vouch for that, but it's probably the truth, probably not the truth, don't really know exactly. I'm just kind of speculating on speculation. So, yeah, we pretty much already had Insidious. And I don't like Insidious. I hate the first movie. I think it's terrible. I think it's extremely overrated. It's like the Drag Me to Hell of this generation. I hate that movie too. I'm sure a lot of you probably lost total respect for me by saying I don't like Drag Me to Hell or Insidious, but that's just how it works. I'm a movie critic. I have my opinions, and I like what I like. So, I will say that it was probably a chance we were going to get Insidious this year. If it does happen, like I said, I'm about 50-50 on it. It could show up at the event, it may not show up at the event, it just depends. I think you wait until the next chapter comes out, and then you do a house based upon everything, going into the further and beyond. I think that would make perfect sense. So, that's what I'm looking at. And also the connection that I said in January that El Kuki was coming to our event for our Urban Legend house. Well, I wouldn't say El Kuki was coming to the event. I think the Boogeyman's coming to the event. And like I said, no, I do not mean the WWE wrestler with the Flavor Flav chain around his neck that eats worms. No, that'd be pretty awesome, but that's another story altogether. I would say that we are going to get a Boogeyman house this year, if that is going to be our urban legend. There's a possibility we could have a Japanese urban legend this year, but I'll get to that when we get to later on in the video. Right now, we're just talking about behind the thrills. I got other things to discuss with other things right at this point. So, obviously, I really think that it's really interesting that this stuff gets brought up. Now, there it is. Okay, good. I want to get that for information for later on in this video. Stuff you haven't even heard me talk about yet. Our next tidbit is something that I know makes Psycho Massacre Films very, very happy, and I know makes Mike Aiello very, very happy, and that is the fact that it is almost a 100% certainty we are getting Halloween this year. John Carpenter's Halloween this year. Like I said, I still stick to the fact that it's possible that Carpenter goes to Orlando and Hollywood gets Rob Zombie. Because obviously there's already been a John Carpenter Halloween house, The Lives and Crimes of Michael Myers in Hollywood, so this is going to be our Halloween house that we've been wanting forever, and I think it's going to finally come to the event. Now, obviously, I take offense, And I'm sure a lot of you out there that saw this article take offense to the fact that Halloween was referred to as very boring. And no, it's not boring. It's very, like, startling and interesting, and it's scary. It's scary. It really is, honestly. Just seeing Michael Myers just standing there is just scary, honestly, because you never know what's going to happen. And I like that. Now, our next tidbit of information comes from something that kind of made me laugh when I saw it, and especially when I did some research into what it was. It mentioned that the Witches of East End was coming to the event in one form or another. Now, if you don't know, I'm going to explain what the Witches of East End is. It is a supernatural drama that's on the Lifetime television network, alright? It's based on a book series by Melissa de la Cruz, alright? And it premiered last year, so it's very fresh, very new. Now, there's a family of witches. They're the Beauchamps. They are Joanna, who is Julia Ormond, and her grown-up daughters, Freya, which is Jenna Tatum, basically Channing Tatum's wife, and Ingrid, which is Rachel Boston, as well as their sister Wendy, which is Madchen Amick. Now, this was recently renewed for a second season. The second season will start on July 6th, so that does coincide with a potential house announcement. But after reading this, I'm thinking, no, that's not going to happen. There's a lot of ties to Supernatural and the television series Supernatural. Do I think it's the Witches of East End? No, it's not Witches of East End. I don't know where they got that idea. But then again, now I'm going to have, like, egg on my face because they're going to be like, oh, the Witches of East End is going to be the next thing. But then again, could that be connecting to the Dust Witch, maybe? Or potentially a connection to American Horror Story? I will get to that in a minute. And by a minute, I mean now. Because that's the next speculation, is the fact that we're getting a greatest hits American Horror Story house. So we have Asylum, we have Coven, and, and we have Murder House. I did not do that in order, sorry. Murder House, Asylum, and Coven. Sorry, I don't watch American Horror Story. And the announcement that Florida will actually be the home of the next season, which is going to be called Freak Show. I think right there, that should tell you that it's not happening this year. And we're not getting American Horror Story this year. We're getting one more year of The Walking Dead, and then American Horror Story will start next year. But then again, I don't know anything to say yes or no on this. I'm just going to guesstimate based upon what I'm hearing. I've heard yes or no that American Horror Story is coming to the event. Obviously, FX and AMC are not going to coexist. So the chances that we get The Walking Dead and American Horror Story in the same year, yeah, not very good. So I think that, like I said, Walking Dead returns one last year in a soundstage. Like, go out with a bang. Always look on the bright side of life. And we get next year, American Horror Story will start with, like I said, our horror homecoming that I said would be very in tune with Michael Myers to be the cornerstone, and this would be a lot about bringing back the former icons and the icons that never were or never were properly introduced to the event. So that was what I was thinking. Our next one is speculation about a video game property, and it's funny because I mentioned Doom a long time ago, and Doom is now speculation. I was like, that's pretty awesome, but I don't know about that. I don't think it's going to be Doom. Doom, yeah, I think its shelf life definitely would work, and its monsters would work, and it would be pretty cool, but I don't think it's Doom. Obviously, there are whispers about BioShock and Dead Space both being possibilities. That could happen. I don't have them on my list of Halloween Horror Nights right now, but I could be mistaken. I might be. Seems like it's a possibility we're getting another Resident Evil experience, whether it's a house or it's the scare zone that I mentioned at the last couple videos I did, that I thought Resident Evil was coming to the event not as a house, but as a street instead. So do I think that we see a video game property at the event this year? I definitely believe we will, but I don't know exactly in what form. Now, our last piece of Behind the Thrills information, and then I will go into Cassilda Clues and speculation on top of that, is the fact that we are definitely going to continue the Urban Legends brand this year. And it looks to me that we're pointing towards, like I said, the Boogeyman. Well, it's interesting because Behind the Thrills mentioned something about a monster who is rather gnarly and eats children. Well, it's funny because the boogeyman can eat children, and La Llorona last year ate children. I think that would be very repetitive if you do 3 years straight, well, 2 years straight in this case, I guess. You do 2 years straight of child-eating monsters. Like, can we go to a different urban legend? There's so many more. And once again, I want this to end in one form or another with a Penn and Teller debunk urban legends house. I want that to happen. I wanted that to happen yesterday. And I talked to TJ Manarino about it specifically, and I know that's probably like, you're thinking out there, oh, and you don't go to a member of Arts and Design and say, hey, I got an idea for a house. They probably hear it all the time. Probably just went in one ear and out the other. But, you know, who knows? If it actually comes to fruition, that would be pretty awesome. And like I said, if you watched that first video on this Halloween Horror Nights playlist, you would know that Penn and Teller is something that obviously I have a connection to in a lot of ways, and I would love another opportunity to be able to see them. As a matter of fact, it's been pretty much my lifelong goal to meet Penn and Teller, and I've tried so many times and I've failed every single time. But I think that Halloween Horror Nights may be my connection. It wasn't in 2012 like I thought it would be, but maybe down the line. I know Teller loved the event. Teller had a blast. I would think that we are going to get another Penn and Teller creation at Halloween Horror Nights within the next several years. Several years could be anywhere from next year to 10 years down the line, but I think Penn and Teller do come to the event again, and I cannot wait till it happens. I'm sorry, I'm a Penn and Teller mark. Deal with it. So, yeah, let's talk about some other things. Now, before I go into the clues, which we got a couple more to talk about now, I do want to mention that it was announced yesterday that Jason Blum has created, along with probably a lot of really awesome people, a escape experience. You know those gimmicks they have now where you are in a room with like 5 strangers or 5 people you know, and you have to escape the room or you die or there's all sorts of consequences? Yeah, they're doing one of those with the Purge now. And the Purge Breakout is actually going to be traveling around the country in various stops for the duration of this summer. And right now, it looks to me like this starts on May 29th. They're going to be in Atlanta. Then they're going to go to Chicago, Miami, Dallas, New York, LA, and end in Philadelphia on June 22nd. I find it interesting that they're going to be in LA during the time that Anarchy comes out. And that would be a great way to pop in to Hollywood and make an announcement. I do think that we get a Purge announcement for Orlando and Hollywood on July 18th when the movie opens, or July 17th when the movie sneak previews. I think that it is another guarantee that the Purge is coming to the event this year. So yeah, I wanted to mention Purge Breakout, so it's not really connected, but it's interesting that they're doing an escape-style attraction, kind of like The Walking Dead do, in pretty much the same exact manner in a different way. And that's something to think about. The fact that people are discounting the fact that Purge could be a house. Yeah, it definitely could be a house, especially if you look at the trailers for Purge Anarchy. So, let's get into this, shall we? Alright. Well, our next clue, our next Cassie clue, came in the form of something we didn't know what it was at the time. I talked about the Who Am I? And I'll refer to it again. Who am I, you ask? I come from the dust. Your tears are my libation, your fears are my crust. I see nothing and I see all. I inhabit the grave, we are in the fall. Yes, it is the age of the fall. It is the autumn. That's right, the autumn people. Yes, it's connecting to something wicked this way comes, is what it sounds like. And it is literally, when you lighten the image, there's a picture of the Dust Witch. And the Dust Witch is a utilization of Mr. Dark. And obviously, I don't know much about this at all. I didn't read it, so I don't know anything. I did a little homework, but not much. This is connected to Ray Bradbury. And this has been alluded to a few times, and it continues with this. I fellowshipped with the odd, bound by bone and dust, stripped away of my beauty, my eyes and mouth hushed, indentured to the dark man, never seeing but always knowing, my soul ripped asunder, my hunger ever growing. When I read this immediately, the first thing that popped in my head, given the fact that the Who Am I connected to Jack the Clown, in an essence, even though it's not really, we've already got our Jack the Clown connection with Cassilda, and that would be like I said, the list of green and white face paint that we talked about the boss wanting green and white face paint again. Well, when I saw this, I fellowship with the Odd. Obviously, we're talking about Oddfellow, and Dr. Oddfellow does have that connection to Jack the Clown, because that's Oddfellow's carnival that he was a part of before his untimely demise. I would say that this is interesting, because the first thing that popped in my head, even though this is the Dust Witch, obviously, was the connection of stripped away of my beauty, my eyes and mouth hushed, indentured to the dark man. So, I thought for a second, not for long, for a second, this might be Chance. And indentured to the dark man, but then I thought about it more and I was like, no, we've already have a Jack clue, and Jack is coming to the event, so this isn't it. This is the connection to the Mr. Darkman. Yes, we're doing a Darkman house. I don't want that to happen ever. To Mr. Dark and the Dust Witch and the Autumn people themselves from Something Wicked This Way Comes. So, what is this connection to? Is this a house? Is this a street? I think it could be either one at this point. Is the Dust Witch our icon this year? I doubt it, but I mean, it could be something connected to it. An original take on Something Wicked This Way Comes could be something literally coming to the event. And when this was posted, Dr. Jimmy posted a illustration. Literally. There is a Ray Bradbury story, like a series of stories. A series of short stories. Kind of like my David Copperfield Tales of the Impossible books I like, which Ray Bradbury is actually a part of those too. And those are great book series if you get a chance to check those out. David Copperfield, Tales of the Impossible, and Beyond Imagination. They are both awesome novels, and check those out. They're series of short stories. Definitely check those out if you get a chance to. There's a story called The Illustrated Man. It's an overweight carnival worker given a second chance as a tattooed man. A strange woman who he visits applies skin illustrations over his entire body, covering 2 special areas, claiming that they will show the future. Alright? The first is a man strangling his wife. Alright? Shortly after this is done, this happens. The carnival workers run a man down, they beat him, and they look into the second area. It's an illustration of the beating he's getting right now. So it's really interesting. Very, very interesting, actually. So yeah, it sounds like we're getting a connection to the Dust Witch. Whatever that means is anyone's guess. But it's interesting. Well, there's more things to talk about. And that comes in the form of the next clue. There's a picture of 2 foxes, and in the background, if you lighten the image, there is literally the Key of Solomon. Now, the Key of Solomon is, in essence, a devil's trap. Alright, basically to trap a devil, kind of like how you would see movies, or I would see movies, I guess you would say in this case, that you'd have like a circle of salt, and if the demons stepped in the circle of salt, then the circle of salt was protection. If the demons stepped around it, yeah, done their party permanently. But yeah, this connects this way. It said 2 little foxes, a rap tap tapping, old man split foot, your soul he's a trackin'. Well, first off, this is a connection to the Fox Sisters. And the Fox Sisters were basically like spirit communicators. And this is something that was listed on, I'll give credit to this. I was talking about the night of March 31st. And of course, there was a challenge to an invisible noisemaker, presumed to be a spirit, to repeat the snaps of her fingers. The rap, tap, tapping. Get it? Makes sense. Now, it did. It was asked to rap out the ages of the girls, so it did. The neighbors were called in, and over the course of the next few days, a code was developed where raps could signify yes or no in response to a question as to indicate a letter of the alphabet. Kind of like how a Ouija board works, but not exactly. Hence, where the 2 little foxes, a rap, tap, tapping makes sense. So the girls addressed the spirit as Mr. Splitfoot. It's another name for the devil, okay? So later, the alleged entity created the sounds claimed to be the spirit of a peddler named Charles B. Rosna. He was murdered 5 years earlier and buried in a cellar. Now, there was claims that the neighbors dug up the cellar and found a few pieces of bone, but it wasn't until 1904 the skeleton was found buried within the cellar walls. No missing person named Charles Rosner was ever identified. So, what does this mean? Well, there's a lot of things to look into this. Number one, the first thing immediately jumps out is, this is our Legendary Truth house this year. This is our connection to Legendary Truth, and this is probably going to be our next in the series after the Wyandotte estate. I think that may end up being the case, and it sounds very possible this is going to equal out to Legendary Truth. Alright. So, there's also a connection to Mr. Splitfoot, and it's actually a song by the band Paris Motel, and that was a song that was utilized on The Walking Dead. So, is this connection to The Walking Dead? I doubt it. I think we've already had that connection. If we have our connection, it's the one that I said that could either be Walking Dead or Resident Evil. You know, the one, excuse me, the one I talked about a while ago. Well, there's another thing, too. Obviously, there is a very famous author, who we've connected with the event already, who utilizes the name Mr. Splitfoot as to refer to the devil, and that is Stephen King. So does that mean we're going to get Stephen King at the event this year? As much as I hate to say it, I don't think that it's going to happen. I think there was way too much red tape this year, and Universal just didn't have enough to get through it. Do I think Stephen King does come to Halloween Horror Nights? I know it will happen. I'm at the point now, I'm not exactly sure if it'll happen while Stephen King is still alive. It might be harder to work with the estate after his passing, or Stephen King finally does end up allowing his properties to be utilized in a Halloween Horror Nights environment somewhere down the line. I think we do end up getting Stephen King somewhere. And I don't just necessarily mean an ode to Stephen King. I mean literally a Stephen King property. As a matter of fact, I think it's so important at this point that if we actually do end up getting Stephen King at this point, why don't they just devote the entire event to Stephen King? It'll just be awesome. Could you imagine being around a soundstage being, like, chased by a car? That'd be awesome. Totally awesome. Like, pets coming to life, like, the pet puppets, like, from Werewolf and hopefully soon to be Alien versus Predator, or Alien or Predator, or one of the two. Those puppets, like, popping out of, like, grave sites and, like, trying to attack you. Oh, it'd be totally awesome. Cujo. I mean, obviously, The Shining. I mean, there's so many great options you can use with Stephen King. So, yeah, and lest I forget it, obviously. I'm sure that'll probably happen if we get a Stephen King series of houses. I think that eventually once Stephen King does sign off on Halloween Horror Nights, I think Universal, along with Arts and Design, basically create a Stephen King-centric Halloween Horror Nights and literally make King himself the focus of the event. And I think that's a great idea to do somewhere down the line. If you get the rights to Stephen King somewhere down the line, I think you really push it every way you possibly can and make the event a Stephen King-centric event. I think it'd be pretty awesome if they did that. So, this Key of Solomon is basically, in an essence, it also helps to aid in contacting the dead, right? Like, within seances, obviously. Basically, the Fox sisters have a connection to someone else. Yeah. Something that we've been talking about for a long time. Through a relative, mind you, but still it's interesting. Okay, in 2009, there was an interview that was in a magazine that was used to promote a video game release, alright? And this interview was done in the American Society for Psychical? That's not even a word, I don't think. Psychical research. That's what the novel says, I'm sorry. I'm just going with what it says. And this interview was with Dan Ackroyd, okay? Obviously, we know he's Ray Stantz from Ghostbusters. We'll talk about that. He was talking about a story. And the story goes like this. My great-grandfather, Sam Ackroyd, was a dentist. He was basically the local critic, alright? He was the local reviewer of any psychic show or act that came through his hometown in Kingston, Ontario, alright? In 1920, that was when this was going on, right? Referring to the young women who helped build the spiritualist movement of the mid-1800s, he added, the people who came through his hometown were people like the Fox sisters from Rochester, New York, who communicated with Mr. Splitfoot, which was a ghost of a person who was murdered and buried in the basement, like the aforementioned story I talked about earlier. Not only did they communicate with Mr. Splitfoot in the house, they took him around the world on a tour with them. So it was almost like they were traveling with the ghost who made them famous. Well, what does this mean? And why did this come to fruition? First off, no one's mentioned it yet, so it may be something we can sweep under the rug. But it's very interesting, especially the timing. This, obviously, has been mentioned since day one. Thank you, Dr. Jimmy. And this has been a potential house that has been listed for a long time, and something that kind of got, forgotten about. It was still in the back of all of our minds, but it was kind of like, yeah, it's not going to happen this year. And it's funny because I was talking to Vic the other night, and it was like, hey, are Ghostbusters and The Exorcist still on the table? And just as quickly as we had that conversation, both were put up back on the table. So, obviously, Mike Aiello, as I talked about in the last video, tweeted about how there was a video that was recently filmed in the archive room. Well, there are a lot of archives to go through. Now, you can look into that in a lot of different ways. Now, the archive room could utilize the fact that we're getting the return of Jack the Clown, and this could be the introduction, how we announce him back to the event, or it could be something else. And that something else, to me, sounds like there's a possibility that there are some old props. And maybe that aforementioned green slime that Dr. Jimmy alluded to earlier from the old Spooktacular show? Yes, it seems to me like it's a very good possibility. This is actually alluding towards Ghostbusters. We've talked about it, and we thought it was going to happen, and we pushed it in the back of our mind, and now, shloop, it's back up again. So yes, I will not make that noise again, I promise. So, are we getting Ghostbusters this year? It's the 30th anniversary. This anniversary is coming rather soon. Rather soon, actually. The anniversary of Ghostbusters is coming up extremely soon. It's actually on June 7th. The tweet that Mike Aiello was talking about that was shot in the archive room was supposed to be coming up soon. Well, soon is 3 weeks from right this moment. So could we be seeing maybe Ivan Reitman? Or potentially Ernie Hudson, since, like Vic mentioned, he is a jam-up guy who does the circuit. He does the convention circuits. He does all, the Comic-Cons and everything. And that be how we get the official announcement of Ghostbusters coming to Halloween Horror Nights 24. And I also talked to Vic about there was an idea that there would be a Q-Line video, which I think would be spectacular if they got away with it. First off, we have to get in touch with Rick Moranis, which I know is kind of hard right now. But if this could be done, this would be amazing, and I'm sure fans would love this. Okay, imagine this. You're in the queue line for Ghostbusters, you're hearing Ray Parker Jr. in the background, you're getting hyped and everything, you're probably playing heads up with everyone in the line like we were last year. And some of you have alcohol in your hands, maybe blinky cups, most likely blinky cups. And some of you are just chatting with everyone about the event and your expectation for the house. And then all of a sudden, you walk by and there's a Q video. And this Q video is hosted by Janine and Lewis. And it's basically telling you to be very careful with the equipment. And you can see Lewis stumbling through and almost breaking things. And of course, you have Rick Moranis and Annie Potts working together like they did in the movies. And I think it would be a really awesome way. It's like, don't worry, it's okay. When you're there, make sure you don't touch anything, because obviously you don't want to touch the grid. If you touch the grid, you may just create everything, and we don't want that to happen again. Or you could throw a little fourth wall thing in. It's like, you know what, you saw the movie, you know what happens. So you know what happens when you flip that switch. So yeah, there'd be an awesome way to utilize it. And yeah, you would get slimed in the house, and it'd be incredible. I really think there is a really good possibility at this moment that Ghostbusters is coming to the event this year, and we all dismissed it for a long time, but the fact that it's the archive room, I know there was a mentioning from Charles that said that it also means that there's a lot of history in that archive room that we could be talking about. But I think this is also a good way to utilize it, and I think this actually might end up being the case. I don't know if it's our first reveal. It very well could be. If we're not getting Alien by itself, and that Alien anniversary, the 35 of Alien, is coming on May 25th, which could be a lot sooner than wow, long day, June 7th. But then again, who knows? They'll have to wait till August 13th before they do the reveal if they want to coincide with an anniversary for Alien vs. Predator. Yeah, could Ghostbusters be a house connected to the Fox sisters? I mean, they could utilize the Fox sisters in the house, and then utilize all the minutia there, and then they could also bring in everything, and it also coincides with the Altar of Gozer and the Gozerians, which, thank you to Vic for coming up with that idea, but it does make total sense. That could be the case. So, are we getting Ghostbusters? You know, more and more, I think that it's a very good possibility at this point, and it would be totally awesome if it actually happens. So, I don't answer the phone at this place, just how it works. So, the connection to the Fox sisters obviously could be through American Horror Story as well, and obviously it's a literal Fox, the two Foxes as in the FX network, which is a subsidiary of the Fox network. The nuns are sisters, the devils play a large role in Season 2. Okay, it makes total sense. Well, there's another connection as well via Papa Legba, and the fact that Fiona was stripped of her beauty in a way, and it somewhat fits the image on Dr. Jimmy's Tumblr, which I'll get to in a minute, of the geishas and the Three Little Maids cryptic comment, the cryptic performance of Three Little Maids from the Mikado. Could that end up being a connection? And there's the rising sun in the background, so like I said, there's a house in New Orleans, they call it Rising Sun, obviously, the connection. And the Rising Sun, New Orleans, American Horror Story. But yeah, I don't think American Horror Story is going to be the case. And I think if we're talking about New Orleans, I think it's connecting to voodoo or vampire. But is that clue now non-void? I'll talk about that in a second. Well, there's another thing too, and this is the connection that goes through Kitsune. I'm using pronunciation, thank you Wikipedia for the pronunciation, Kitsune, which is a Japanese word for fox, and the Kitsune is a connection which could end up being like our urban legend, a Japanese urban legend is what we're looking at, Japanese folklore, Japanese urban legend, which is a possibility if we don't get the boogeyman. But I think it's a possibility that that may not be the case, and this could be something more interesting. Shout out to Tim for coming up with that idea. Okay, let's talk about Dr. Jimmy's Tumblr. There's some new images on there. Now, the first image is literally the Fox sisters going to a house, so that connects to the latest Cassie Clue. Excuse me. And there is an image that looks kind of like a Sex Pistols album cover. I know it's not, but it looks like a Sex Pistols album cover. And it's from Vampires United, which is a connection to Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. You know, the novelization of the Will Smith movie. Yeah, that's interesting. Then there's a picture that connects to a steampunk carnival. Supposedly. The Clockwork Carnival is the closest thing that I could find to it. I don't know if that's the case or not. But the guy itself, he's dressed in black and white, he's got the top hat, he's got the goggles, he's in front of a big giant steampunk building, which looks like an Oz logo at the top. This Wizard of Oz looks a lot like the Dreamfinder. Like a steampunk version of the Dreamfinder. Of course, maybe that's just a figment of my imagination. So, there's a picture of, like, English characters that miss, I have a monstrous crow to pluck with you. So, more clues to nightingales, maybe. It's possible. I know it's a crow and not a nightingale, but, you know, it could connect. A really awesome picture of three kitties is Charlie's Angels. I thought that was cool. I don't think there's a connection there, but who knows at this point. And then there were a couple of things. Now, obviously, we saw the connection with a really awesome picture of Jamie Lee Curtis on one side and Michael Myers on the other side from Halloween. And it's a really cool image. And there's also a series of masks from Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And that's interesting that it's in there. So, yeah, Halloween connections abund. So, I think it's a possibility. And still, that Steampunk Oz I keep talking about seems more and more likely, because there's a lot of pictures, like I said, from the Bill and Ted show in Hollywood last year. You know, the one that got canceled because some guy decided he wanted to run his mouth and pretty much ruined everything for everyone. It only takes one person to run it for everyone. That's the reason why my theater does not have salt shakers. So there. So there's a picture of the Tin Man basically decapitating the witch. And there is a picture of Judy Garland herself next to the Scarecrow, and it looks really ominous. So yeah, maybe it's connecting our Steampunk Oz, which you look to be getting. And once again, the connection to the chauffeur from Burnt Offerings. It's him opening the door with his evil, evil smile. And maybe that's the connection to him potentially being the devil, because apparently that's what the personification of the devil is in Burnt Offerings, supposedly. And like I said, I'm judging on what somewhat I've heard. So yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about on this. God, we still have a lot of stuff left to go. So, 3 permits are now out. 3 permits have now been released officially. You can check them if you'd like to. City of Orlando posts their stuff online. So if you check out Halloween Horror Nights 2014, you'll see that they have given permits for the 2 Sprung tents as well as Disaster Queue. Disaster Queue has been completely wiped out of all props. Now, does this mean that we're getting the whole area used, or is this potentially overflow queue for Diagon Alley? It's a possibility that may end up being the case. Connect the Diagon Alley some way. Who knows at this point? This sounds like we're getting a very nice property in Disaster this year, but I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be at this point. I guess I'll have to speculate when I find out more about, a little more concrete about what I think is going to actually be at the event this year. Excuse me. So, then we got a clue. Last night, Mike Aiello tweets, "Writing a treatment this week with the team. This one came late in the mix. Finally got it. Codename Alter. Late night info. Boom. Alter." What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think Alter? Something that's already been speculated upon by everyone that was coming to the event. In both Orlando and Hollywood, mind you. Yes. Alter comes to mind immediately, The Exorcist. And obviously that is a clue with Father Merrin talking to an altar boy during the movie. And obviously the altar being used in exorcisms made sense. And obviously altars also connect to Gozer and the Gozerians. And there's also a connection to Alien vs. Predator, thanks also to Dr. Emmett Brown 1, for the victims being placed in the Chamber of Sacrifices of the Pyramid, arranged identically to hibernation pods in Alien from 1979. Excuse me. So, obviously, another connection, UKHHN is also talking about the Serpent and the Rainbow being our connection to our potential voodoo house this year, if it didn't get canceled already, which we don't know which property got 86 for this new one that came not the last minute, but came late in the game. Here's the question. Here's what I think happened. This could be Exorcist, Ghostbusters, and Alien vs. Predator. All 3 things we've already talked about. Now, is it The Exorcist? I think it's a very good possibility. I think it's probably my choice that it's going to be The Exorcist. The reason why is because there's no connection to a Dr. Jimmy clue. There's no connection to a Cassilda clue because this came late in the game. This came so late in the game that they didn't know they were going to get it. My opinion is that John Murdy already got this property for Hollywood's event this year. And basically Murdy says, you know what, I got a chance at getting Exorcist. And Aiello said, you know, how about we just, we'll just check with them later. We've already got our event full this year. You know, you guys just take it, and we'll take it another year. It's alright. We won't share it. No big deal. Well, a phone call came late in the night, and Murdy was kind of like, I'm just speculating on this. This probably isn't true, but I'm speculating on it. Basically like, hey, Mike, the Exorcist people got a hold of me, and they were curious if you were still interested, because they want to play ball. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm definitely interested. But what do I do? Okay, well, I'll just bump this to next year's event and we'll be fine. And it would play on the fact, also, that earlier today, John Murdy tweeted himself that for all of those who follow the hints, I'm going to have to revise the Maze codename, the first one being Malcolm. Things change. So is Malcolm gone? Or is Malcolm changed? Who knows? Makes me think that Orlando and Hollywood both got something at the last minute. Given the fact that I already think Hollywood had The Exorcist, and Orlando just got The Exorcist, that's interesting wording, isn't it? So what do we lose? If you believe what people are saying now, it sounds like we're possibly not getting Nightingales this year. And yes, the Geisha's picture is not connected to Nightingale's World War II. It's potentially connecting to this Japanese folklore, Japanese urban legend house that we keep hearing about. But then again, maybe these geishas, or the kitsune, or, yeah, I erased the way to pronounce it, sorry, the long day. Kitsune, yeah, that's it, yeah, kitsune. Maybe they're going to be chased by the Ghostbusters, potentially, so maybe that's our connection. So yeah, who knows? There's a lot of things to believe about the event this year. There's a lot of things that we can talk about the event this year. And there's so many awesome things that are coming out this early. And very soon our announcements are going to start. Literally, soon it will start. So, to recap, obviously, do I think we're getting Ghostbusters, The Exorcist, and Alien vs. Predator this year in one form or another? Absolutely. I think it is going to happen. That's, like I said, as of May 17th, at almost 4 o'clock, that's what I'm thinking. This is a nearly hour-long video. I'm sorry it's so long. I apologize. But I had a lot to get out. But yes, that's what I'm thinking right now. And, like I said, I apologize for the long video, but thanks to all of you out there that stuck with me through all of it. There were so many things to talk about, and a lot of things that had to be said. So, I want to throw out some shout-outs, as always, before I go. Shout out straight up to Dr. Jimmy Documo on YouTube and my good friend Psycho Massacre Films. You can check him out, as well as Dr. Emmett Brown 1, aka Vic, UK HHN, as well as Admiral HHN, HHN Trogdor, Mr. Horror Nights, Thrill Seeker Network, The Red Steel TV, Deadly Fear 1283, and did I mention it? Yeah, HHN Fan I6, which will be doing videos again very soon. And obviously, I want to throw another shout out to a newcomer to Halloween Horror Nights Updating, and that is Crazy Englishman from Halloween Horror World. Yes, your videos are awesome. I very much enjoy them, so hopefully you'll watch my videos and enjoy those as well. Continued shout outs to my team from Twitter, who helped me try to decrypt these cryptic comments, cryptic clues, cryptic performances, anything all cryptic about the event this year. Mystic Freak, and Tim, as well as Brian Carter, for helping me with that. And you guys are all awesome. I continue to help work with you to try to dissect this event and basically to figure out what everything is, decrypt everything. As well as shout-outs on Facebook to Sean, Jeremy, and Charles from Designing the Fear. So, that's all we have for today. In the meantime, if you like these videos, tell your friends about them, leave a comment, do subscribe, and help spread the word about Pop. You can like our Facebook fan page at Sir Owen Disney Pop. You can send me a request to be a friend of mine on Facebook. It's Owen Disney. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's at Sir Owen Disney. If you'd like to just like this video and basically spread the word, you can do that. I'd really appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, you want to send your thoughts, comments, queries, and opinions. You want to talk Horror Nights with me, ideas you have for houses, and ideas you have for the event this year. Your personal speculation, either leave a comment or you can do it old-fashioned. Email me, SirOwenDisney@gmail.com. In the meantime, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. And until tomorrow, boys and girls, that's all I got to say about that.